At number 10, a contortionist. In 2011, a lot of people were having valuables stolen on the route between Girona Airport and Barcelona, Spain. It was only an hour-long bus trip and the bags stayed in the baggage compartment. So, what was happening? It turns out a contortionist was working with accomplices to steal laptops and other valuables on the frequent trips. One man would load a suitcase onto the bus at the airport and then another man would pick it up in Barcelona. The contortionist in the suitcase would get out in between the stops and look for valuables with a flashlight. So the best joke about this one comes from a police spokesman. I believe this is what the British call an open and shut case. Because it's a suitcase. It's just funny.
In our number 9 spot today, we have Victor and Natalia Wolf. We've got a 2-for-1 on this one, a husband and wife team like Bonnie and Clyde who are on the run for their alleged involvement in a massive real estate scheme. Of course, it's not a new idea to buy real estate for cheap and then sell it for more than you purchased it for, but these guys decided to go one step further and skip that whole first part. They wouldn't even buy the properties, they just sell them. They targeted immigrants mainly, and what they would do is drop fake ownership documents for properties and then basically just sell them, even though they obviously had no legal right to do that. By doing this, the pair was living in a lap of luxury. They had fancy jewelry, luxury cars that included a $350,000 Maybach. They were living out their dream, but this was back in the early 2000s, and everything changed when the housing bubble burst. In the end, the pair was indicted by a grand jury in 2011, but by then it was too late. The couple had fled and no one has been able to locate them since. They are said to have had ties in Florida, Arkansas, Texas, and New York, but authorities think that they might just be living in Russia. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Beer Man. This is the surprisingly low-key name given to the unidentified serial killer who took the lives of at least 6 people in Mumbai, India between October 2006 and January of 2007. It's a lot of people in a very short amount of time. The reason this unidentified monster is called the Beer Man is due to one fact about each crime scene, which ended up being how they linked these crimes together in the first place. This was the presence of beer bottles that were found scattered next to each of the bodies that were found. Of course, it's been over a decade since the crimes were committed, so it's definitely upsetting that this person hasn't been caught yet. Mumbai police have investigated and interviewed hundreds of people, but still haven't quite collected the evidence they need to be certain of the suspect. In our number 7 spot today, we have Joseph McCool. So Joseph was one part of a scheming trio. He, along with 2 other men named Cameron Campbell and Donald Manning, formed a company called Brixton Group. This group was built on promising a pretty stellar deal where an investment would guarantee you a 10% return per month, and that it was risk-free because the money was actually insured by the State Bar of California. And not only this, but also this money would be lent to countries that were experiencing war in Eastern Europe so that they would be able to purchase refrigerators for citizens who were impoverished. Wow, that's quite a deal, isn't it? I don't know, something about it seems too good to be true, but maybe that's because I know what happens next. Of course, in 2006, it turns out that a grand jury indicted the 3 men because, well, I mean, there were no fridges, there was no insurance as promised, and of course, there was no monthly return, 10% or otherwise. Both Cameron and Donald pleaded guilty to their charges of fraud and conspiracy, and they served their time for their crimes. But not good old Joe. No, of course, that guy has to flee and just disappear into the wind. Some authorities believe he may be hiding in Europe, while others believe he may be in the Philippines. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Honolulu Killer. This is another one of those pesky, horrifying, unidentified serial killers who, of course, was active in and around Honolulu, Hawaii. These crimes took place in 1985 and 1986, and throughout those years, it is said that whoever is responsible for these crimes took the lives of at least 5 women. The women seemingly didn't have any connection to each other as they were from all different walks of life, but because of the gruesome similarities of each crime, authorities were able to determine that they were likely committed by the same person. Despite the years it's been, the perpetrator has never been identified and could still be out there somewhere, hiding from taking responsibility for their actions. In our number 5 spot today, we have John and Julianne Dimitrion. Back with another husband and wife team, this pair were mortgage brokers turned fraudsters. They were last seen in July of 2010, which was just before they were set to appear in a federal court in Honolulu to face the consequences of their schemes, which they had previously pled guilty to. Basically, the pair had another company called Mortgage Alliance, and this company would target homeowners who were in trouble and facing things like foreclosure. The pair would offer to purchase their homes and help repair their credit. They claimed that they would invest the funds, but rather than doing this, they instead kept the money for themselves to fund their expensive hobbies, which included collecting things like high-end electronics, airsoft replica firearms, and designer purses, shoes, and lingerie. At least they were using their money responsibly. You can tell that they just really needed it, which I respect. The pair has, of course, been on the run for over a decade now, which means that they truly could be anywhere, and authorities have received tips of their potential whereabouts from all over the world. Currently, there is a $10,000 reward that the FBI is offering for any information that leads to their arrest. In our number 4 spot today, we have Jason Derek Brown. This piece of work has been missing ever since November of 2004. That's quite a long time, but that doesn't mean authorities are giving up looking for him. Jason fled from Phoenix, Arizona in that year after he allegedly took the life of an armored car guard who was outside of a movie theater. After committing this horrific crime, he then took the money and ran. On the FBI website, where it details his crimes as well as other things about him and who to contact with any information, gives like a little bio on Jason, and in it says that he enjoys being the center of attention and that he clearly likes showing off his luxurious lifestyle. It's crazy how many of these people who are known for like trying to flaunt their actually stolen lifestyle. It's just wild. Another thing that the website reminds us of is that he should be considered armed and extremely dangerous, so just be careful out there. In our number 3 spot today, we have the I-70. This is the name of what is believed to be an unidentified serial killer who is known to have taken the lives of 6 store clerks in the Midwest in the spring of 1992. The reason he is referred to as the I-70 killer is because most of the stores were just a few miles off of Interstate 70. While most of his victims were women, there was one man, but it is believed that he may have been expecting a female employee. The killings were clearly the main objective of his crimes, considering the fact that at each scene there was only a small amount of cash that was taken. Aside from these initial 6 crimes, it is thought that he also might be responsible for the deaths of 3 more store clerks in Texas in 1993 and 1994, as well as 1 more in Indiana in 2001. This story has been featured on episodes of Unsolved Mysteries, America's Most Wanted, and Dark Minds, but despite this, whoever is responsible has never been identified. In our number 2 spot today, we have Victor Guerrena. Back in September of 1983, Victor was 25 years old and was a trusted employee of the West Hartford, Connecticut Wells Fargo Express Company, but on September 12th, that all changed. After working throughout the day and completing the scheduled rounds of currency collection from the local banks, Victor held his coworkers hostage before tying them up, handcuffing them, and injecting them with a mysterious substance he claimed would leave them unable to move. After doing this, Victor proceeded to take about $7 million, which was one of the largest cash robberies in US history at the time. His co-workers were later able to get themselves untied and they called authorities, but by that time Victor was gone. They found his car, but it had been abandoned, and of course the money was gone. They later found out that Victor was a part of a larger group who had orchestrated this entire thing, and they also found out that part of the money was used to purchase a surface-to-air missile that was later launched at FBI headquarters in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Thankfully, it turned out to be a huge waste of money because it did little damage, and fortunately no one was injured. 2 years later, there were 14 people who were arrested in Puerto Rico, Massachusetts, and Texas as they were found to be involved in the entire operation, but Victor once again escaped capture and has not been seen since. In our number 1 spot today, we have Glenn Stewart Godwin. Man, this guy definitely has quite the history. So basically, in 1980, Glenn was working in California and didn't really have too much of a criminal record. For some reason, he and his roommate, however, decided to make a plan to rob someone that they knew who was once a friend of theirs. Of course, things go awry and it turns into a botched robbery, and Glenn ends up taking the life of the person that they were robbing. Also, this isn't necessarily important to what we were talking about today, but it's just so unhinged I couldn't leave it out. In an attempt to destroy the evidence, Glenn tried to blow up the crime scene. The explosive went off, but obviously they were still able to figure out who committed the crime. Both Glenn and his roommate were both tried and convicted for the crimes in 1983. This of course is not where the story ends, however. In 1987, Glenn tried to escape prison and failed, and this landed him at a higher security prison. prison, Folsom State Prison, which is actually a maximum security prison. Somehow, once at this new one though, he attempted another escape and this time was successful. He fled to Mexico where he tried unsuccessfully to be a part of an illegal drug trade. He was arrested again and sentenced in Mexico, and this is when American authorities began the process of trying to get him extradited. During this process, Glenn decided that it would be a brilliant idea to take the life of an inmate who was a member of the Mexican drug cartel, which very obviously slowed the process of extradition. This gave him time to plan another escape, which he did in 1991, and since then he has been on the run.
Starting us off at number 10 is Robert William Fisher. Added to the FBI's most wanted fugitives list back in 2002, in a plot twist turn of events, Fisher used to be a firefighter, a surgical technician, and even joined the Navy for a bit. All jobs a fugitive should definitely not have. To paint a picture of what he was like, to teach his kids how to swim, he threw them out of a boat, and the one time his wife Mary spoke up back to him, he hosed her down. His parents divorced growing up, and he claimed he would contemplate suicide if Mary ever divorced him, which we know was her plan. In April 2001, neighbors heard the Fishers loudly arguing at around 10:30 p.m. 15 minutes later, cameras placed Robert at an ATM taking out money using Mary's car. At 8:42 a.m., their house exploded and the flames were 20 feet high. This was not a joke. The gas line that led to the house's furnace was pulled, so there was accumulating gas in the house that Fisher used to set the house ablaze. It's believed he only set the house on fire to try and conceal his crimes, which were killing his wife and her children. He shot Mary in the back of the head and slashed the kids' throats. When the fire was put out, it was clear Fisher had disappeared, and immediately he became the only person of interest in the case. 2 weeks later, Mary's car and their dog were found near Tonto National Forest, so initially they thought he may have been hiding out in the caves and had either killed himself or died from the low oxygen levels, but sightings of him over the years prove he's still alive and well, unfortunately.
In our number 9 spot today, we have the River City Ripper. One of the most terrifying things that exists are serial killers who are still on the loose, especially when you find out that they've been recently active. This serial killer is wanted in connection to 4 different incidents that occurred in Little Rock, Arkansas, 3 of which were fatal. These horrific crimes took place between August of 2020 and April of 2021, and despite one of the victims thankfully surviving the attack and being able to provide a description of the assailant, there is still very little to go on in terms of being able to identify this horrible human. The FBI was contacted shortly after the survivor was able to give a testimony to authorities, and their behavioral analysis team created a profile of this unidentified killer. These crimes are terrible any way you spin them, but one of the most terrifying parts is that they were all just completely random acts of violence that occurred just unprovoked. The case has gained quite a bit of attention, but still, the monster remains at large. In our number 8 spot today, we have Ruja Ignatova. This woman is a convicted fraudster who has been on the run since 2017 after she disappeared when she was found out to be the founder of a Ponzi scheme. The scam, known as OneCoin, which was a scam that was surrounding cryptocurrency, has been referred to as one of the biggest scams in history. US prosecutors have claimed that the scheme was so huge it brought in approximately $4 billion worldwide. Ruja had impeccable timing as she disappeared right at the time that there was a secret US warrant being filed for her arrest. Despite being on the run since 2017, in 2019 she was charged in absentia by US authorities for wire fraud, securities fraud, as well as money laundering. This lady is living the real life Ozark. It's absolutely insane. This case truly is something you'd expect to see on TV, but she's just living it. Despite the years it's been, international authorities are still doing their best to find out where she has been hiding, and this includes raids that have happened just this year. In our number 7 spot today, we have the vending machine killer. Okay, so for this one, we have to know that apparently there are a lot of vending machines in Japan. Like, it's said that there's one for every 23 people. It's a lot of vending machines. So in 1985 in Hiroshima, there were 12 people who passed away and 35 people who were seriously injured from being poisoned with a chemical herbicide. When the string of poisonings were investigated, authorities realized that they had one thing in common, and that was the fact that they had all had the same drink shortly before falling ill. So around the time of this whole thing, there was a company that had launched a marketing campaign where they gave a free drink with every purchase made from a vending machine. When people didn't want their free drink, they would would leave it on top of the vending machine for the next person who came along, which is super nice and thoughtful and kind, and of course that means that some horrible person out there had to ruin it for everyone. So, as it turns out, someone was taking these drinks, lacing them with poison, and then leaving them on top of the machines for some random stranger to come around, drink it, and then be sick or unfortunately pass away. It is almost impossible for authorities to be able to track down whoever was doing this, because you have to narrow down where the person picked up the drink, and in 1985 there weren't as many CCTV cameras as there are now. So unfortunately, whoever was responsible for a mass poisoning of strangers is still out there somewhere. In our number 6 spot today we have Jan Marsalek. Jan is said to be a white-collar criminal who fled and went into hiding in June 2020 after the Wirecard scandal, as he was the COO of the company. If you're unfamiliar, Wirecard was a German payment processing firm that had years and years of allegations of malpractice against them. The entire thing really came to a peak in 2019 when the Financial Times published some of the investigations into the complaints, as well as internal documents. In the end, in 2020, Wirecard filed for insolvency after it was realized that 1.9 billion euros were missing. If anyone finds that missing $1.9 billion, my DMs are wide open. It is believed that Jan is one of the main culprits in the entire scandal, and to be fair, fleeing the country doesn't really make you look very innocent. It is believed that he may be located in Russia now, but since August of 2020, Interpol has issued a red notice for him, which requests that worldwide law enforcement be on the lookout for him in order to arrest him, where he can then be extradited. In our number 5 spot today we have Bible John. This is the name used in reference to an unidentified serial killer who was responsible for Scotland's largest manhunt. All 3 of his victims were young brunette women between the ages of 25 to 32, and they had all met him at the Barrowland Ballroom, which was a dance and music venue in Glasgow. Despite this important information, he has never been able to be identified. This was actually the first time in Scotland in which the Crown Office authorized the publication of a composite drawing of the man who was suspected of the crimes. The reason he is called Bible John is said to be because he apparently repeatedly quoted the Bible, which is, I don't know, just really creepy. Most of the key information in the investigation came from one of the victim's sisters, Jean Langford, who had been in the same taxi as her sister and the suspected killer on the night he took her life. She was able to give a description of the man and was able to give information that helped authorities create a profile of him. Despite her incredibly helpful information, he was never able to be caught, and Jean passed away in 2010. While Bible John might have also passed away by now, I still hope that one day authorities can figure out who he was. In our number 4 spot today we have Monica Witt. Monica is a former United States Air Force technical sergeant as well as a defense contractor who has been on the run since 2018. Despite her high-ranking position and high security clearance, she is on the run because she defected to Iran in 2013. It is said that from 2013 up until she was found out that she was using her position in order to spy on the United States and relay that information back to the group she was working for. She used different fake Facebook accounts, and it is said that the information she gave included the classified true name and counterintelligence activities of a US intelligence operative. This is of course a problem regardless of how important this operation was, but it is said that this information she shared had the potential to cause serious damage to the United States national security. It is an absolutely wild story, and Monica is still out there on the run, hiding from the consequences of her betrayal and espionage. In our number 3 spot today we have John Pyle. This horrible human isn't an undercover spy or insane fraudster. He is just a monster who committed certain crimes that are unfortunately a little more common than any of us would like to know. Because of the nature of his crimes, I can't talk about them here in this video, but let's just say that he is definitely one of the worst kinds of criminals out there. On June 24th, 2016, authorities searched his home after receiving 3 tips relating to his crimes. The amount of and the severity of the incriminating evidence they found during this search ended up landing him charged with 30 different second-degree felonies, which could bring a sentence of 450 years in prison. He was arrested the same day and posted a bail bond of $90,000. Why he was able to get bail, I'll never know. And he also had to surrender his passport. Flash forward 16 months to October 23rd, 2017, and of course, this guy doesn't show up for his hearing, and thus we have a fugitive on the run. Even though he gave up his passport, it is said that he was still somehow able to board a Carnival cruise ship that was bound for Cozumel, Mexico. He got off the ship when it arrived and never reboarded. Despite efforts from international authorities as well as bounty hunters, he has still yet to be located. The last time he was seen was in February of 2018 in Nuevo Leon. In our number 2 spot today, we have Alejandro Castillo. Alejandro is an American man who was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list in October of 2017. He was added to the list after disappearing after taking the life of a woman named Sandy Lai Lee. Sandy was a co-worker of his, and it is said that the two might have briefly dated. Basically, apparently, she had lent him some money that he had never repaid. On August 9th, 2016, Alejandro texted Sandy saying that he would like to repay her, and they agreed to meet at a quick trip. Alejandro was driven to this meeting by Amaya Feaster, who is said to be his new girlfriend. It is believed that once at the meeting, instead of repaying her, Alejandro forced Sandy to take out all of the money from her bank account, which is said to have been about $1,000. After this, the pair drove Sandy to a wooded area where it is said that he then took her life. After this, the pair fled the scene of the crime and drove from North Carolina to Phoenix, Arizona. They then ended up fleeing into Mexico from there. While Amaya turned herself into authorities on October 20th, 2016, Alejandro remains at large and on the run. Despite the years it's been, I hope that one day he is found so he can be brought to justice for this horrible, senseless crime. In our number 1 spot today, we have Bhadrash Kumar Patel. This is a man who, in 2015, was in the United States in Hanover, Maryland, with his wife Palak. It is said that the pair were traveling to visit relatives and that they had both taken a job at a local Dunkin' Donuts that was owned by one of their family members. It was at this location that on April 12th, 2015, it is said that he took the life of his wife. Surveillance footage shows the two of them walking together in the kitchen around 9:30 p.m. that day before they disappear out of view behind some racks that were in the kitchen. Shortly after this, he reappears alone, turns the oven off, and leaves. Authorities believe that this all may have been over an argument where one of the couple wanted to return to India while the other wanted to stay in the United States. After customers of the store began getting worried when no one came to take their order, they thankfully decided to approach a nearby police officer. The officer went to investigate, and that is when he sadly found her body. The last sighting of him was on April 13th at around 10 a.m. at Newark Penn Station in New Jersey. He had taken a hotel shuttle there and has never been seen since. There is currently a $100,000 reward for information that leads to his whereabouts. It truly is an unimaginable horror, and I hope that this monster is one day brought to justice.
Starting us off with number 10 is Jack the Stripper, not to be confused with his earlier inspiration Jack the Ripper. So back in 1964 and 65, there occurred in London, England, the Hammersmith nude murders. Those murders encompassed the brutal killing of 6 prostitutes, all of whom were found naked inside or near the River Thames. He killed 2 women before the 6th, and it's not confirmed he was the perpetrator, but it was very likely. The first early victim was 21-year-old Elizabeth Figg, who was found strangled and naked on a north bank of the river. The second victim was 22-year-old Gwyneth Reese, the third was Hannah Tailford, then came Irene Lockwood, Helen Barthélemy, the 6th was Mary Fleming, and the last 2 were Frances Brown and Bridget O'Hara, but interestingly enough, these 2 girls weren't found anywhere near the river. A sketch of the murderer made him seem quite young at the time, and despite there being many suspects, the person was never captured, meaning someone is hiding out there who's killed 8 people and probably more.
Next up, at number 9, we have Ayman al-Zawahiri. After Osama bin Laden was killed in 2011, al-Zawahiri has been the leader of Al-Qaeda. The terrorist organization is confirmed to have carried out numerous attacks throughout the world, leading to hundreds if not thousands of deaths, and they have also claimed responsibility for other violent crimes. There is currently a 25 million USD reward for information that leads to his arrest. Moving right along, at number 8, we have Rocco Morabito. Morabito is an Italian mobster and something of an escape artist when it comes to evading the law. He has been on the run for 23 years, starting back in 1994. Is this real life right now? How can we not capture this guy? We have so much advanced technology. And he's been on the run for his crimes related to drug trafficking, the mafia, and other serious crimes. His wiki actually never revealed what his crimes were. They were probably too horrifying, but if we're dealing with the mafia, I can only imagine what he's done. I've watched a lot of movies. Well, he was ultimately caught in 2017 with a bunch of guns, credit cards, cell phones, money. But like I said at the beginning of this, he's an escape artist. So he was able to escape again 2019. So we're talking just last year, and right now he's still at large. Number 7 spot today goes to George Luis Mendoza Cardenas. Cardenas is a Mexican drug lord, one of the leaders of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. This cartel provides marijuana, heroin, meth, and cocaine to some of the biggest cities in the US. He has been wanted since 2016, but also for the gruesome murder of a family of 6. He was arrested in 2008, but was mysteriously released with no explanation. My explanation might be drug money. He might have bought his way out of this one, and threats. He probably threatened a lot of people. He has been wanted by the DEA since 2016, and he's somewhere out there. Our number 6 spot goes to Nemesia Asegura Cervantes. Cervantes is the official leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, above even Cardenas. He is the most wanted fugitive in Mexico right now, and the government is offering 30 million MXN just for the information that leads to his arrest. He is actually suspected on ordering the murder of 17-year-old YouTube star Juan Rosales, and this is after he made a video making fun of him. Halfway through this list now, we have Anders Cameroon Ostevik Dale. Dale has been blacklisted since 2014 by the US Department of State, but he has been wanted ever since 2012 for his connections with Al-Qaeda. After breaking off contact with his wife, he has been reportedly missing since 2012, and he is suspected to have received explosives training, specifically in making bomb belts, explosives, and car bombs. He became wanted in 2012 after planning the bombing of the 2012 Olympic Games. Next up, number 4, we have Hayat Bomendini. Bomendini is wanted for being the accomplice to her husband, Amity Coulibaly, after he shot and killed a police officer at the Montarogue shooting. He also took hostages and killed 4 civilians in the Port de Vences siege, and this is where he was killed by police. So although her husband was killed by police, she's still out there somewhere, and she's still very dangerous, and she is still wanted. In at number 3 is David Durham. Durham has been wanted by the FBI since 2011 after shooting and seriously injuring a cop at a routine traffic stop. To this day, nobody is sure why he reacted the way he did. Did he commit other crimes that he didn't want to get caught for? His friends and family said that he has been on painkillers and seemed paranoid leading up to the shooting. He disappeared immediately after shooting the police officer, and even after extensive search, there has been no confirmed sightings of him. I mean, he's now become like the Loch Ness Monster. Like, where is he? Coming at number 2 is Eugene Palmer. Palmer is one of the most recent additions to the FBI's top 10 wanted fugitives list. And this is after his son and daughter-in-law separated and the DIL got a restraining order against her husband. She and Palmer got into multiple heated arguments. This escalated until one day when Palmer started shooting at her from a distance and then provided one last close-range shot that killed her. He has been on the run ever since that happened, and no traces of him has ever been found other than the pickup truck that was used to flee the scene, but he has not been seen. And wrapping our number 1 spot, we have Xavier Dupont de Legons. Legons is currently at large for murdering and burying his entire family behind their home. Is this real life right now? Well, in early April of 2011, he shot and killed his wife, their 4 children, ages 20, 18, 16, and even 13, and their family dog. Their bodies were found a few weeks later under their porch, and despite 900 suspected sightings of this guy since, he has never been caught. This guy has become a mastermind. Well, there you guys have it. That was your top 10 scariest people who are still in hiding. Hopefully none of us come across him, and hopefully these people are caught really soon. So starting us off on this list, number 10, we have Harif Saeed. Well, Saeed is the co-founder of the militant group Lashkar-e Taiba and chief of Jamaat Dawa. Well, there's been a bounty of 10 million USD since 2012, so if you find him and capture this guy, you can be rewarded $10 million. Well, this bounty was placed on him after he had a role in the 2008 Mumbai attacks that caused 164 civilians to lose their lives. However, he claims that he had nothing to do with the attacks, and he laughed at the bounty that is out for him, stating, "I'm living my life in the open, and I might be somewhere in the US. I'm here in front of everyone, and I'm not hiding in a cave." Pretty damn terrifying if you asked me.
Coming in at number 9 is John Paul Sr. As an American racing driver, John won the FIA World Challenge for Endurance Drivers in 1978 and 1980, and he won the Trans Am Cat 2 in the year in between, and that's about it in terms of his achievements. Now let's go in chronological order. In 1979, custom agents discovered weed residue on his boat and then found 710 kilograms of it in a nearby truck, which got him 3 years of probation. Then in 1981, his wife, who he had separated from, vanished into thin air, and then he divorced her. Very odd, no investigation into it, but moving on. Then in 1983, a man called Stephen Carson was shot 5 times in Florida, and he claimed it was John who shot him. He was then arrested before fleeing right before his trial. He was caught in Switzerland and then extradited the hell back to the US, where he was imprisoned by 1986. Then he tried to escape, failed, and was eventually granted parole in 1999. But there is more. After he got out, he met an office manager called Colleen Wood. It was a whirlwind romance. She sold her house and quit her job and moved in with him on his boat so they could go on some honeymoon round the world boat trip or something. But the next December, she too had disappeared into thin air. Paul was suspected but not charged, and he too then magically disappeared. A randomer saw him in the Fiji Islands and reported him, but nothing happened. The FBI are still looking for him to question him on Colleen's disappearance, and I feel like they should add his first wife's case into it as well. Like, nobody's looking for her. They should be. At number 8, we have Bible John. Ah, you son of a gun. The Bible John is an unknown serial killer that killed 3 women in Scotland back at the end of the 60s. The man had a specific type: young, brunette, attractive. Kinda sounds like me, to be honest. Now, each woman had met him at the Barrowland Ballroom and then I guess got led away by him. The first victim was 25-year-old Patricia Docker, who was found in a garage doorway. Cause of death: strangulation. The second victim was 32-year-old mother of 3, Jemima McDonald, who actually had eyewitnesses. They saw her leaving with a brunette tall man who had a Glaswegian accent and kept quoting the Bible, hence the name Bible John. The 2 murders gave up no suspects, and initially the police didn't even think they were murdered by the same person, despite all the shocking similarities between both crimes. The third victim was 29-year-old Helen Putek, who had been badly beaten and raped. Helen met the man with her sister Jean, and he had introduced himself as John. When the third case was brought to light, it was clear they had a serial killer on their hands, and despite having countless suspects, including serial killer Peter Tobin, there was no arrest or conviction made. Bible John never killed again, but he's still out there somewhere when he should be in jail. Filling at number 7 slot is William Morales. So this man was the chief bomb maker for the Armed Forces of National Liberation, which was a Puerto Rican paramilitary organization that wanted Puerto Rico to be independent. William had joined the FALN by 1970 and was implicated in around 50 bombings within 4 years. The worst incident occurred in January of 1975 when the Francis Tavern Museum was bombed, killing 4 people and injuring over 50. William was actually interviewed by the FBI in 76 but was let go since they thought he was just an activist and not a suspect. Oh boy, was you wrong. 2 years later, William was in the middle of making a pipe bomb, but he messed up. The timer on his bombs was set by the hour hand, but he had filed down the minute hand by accident, and so the bomb detonated in his hand 4 hours early, and he got it bad. He lost an eye, 9 fingers, his lips, his jaw was fractured, and of course, he had passed out. When he woke up, he tried destroying the evidence before the police could get there, but when they did, authorities found 200 pounds of explosives and 66 sticks of dynamite, and they took him to a hospital because, criminal as he may have been, his injuries were extensive and dire. He was convicted in 1979 and sentenced to 99 years in jail, but after being moved from prison to Bellevue General Hospital, he managed to escape out of his window. He quickly fled to Mexico, and despite being caught, he wasn't extradited and then just went to Cuba to live since being given political asylum. But till this day, he's still on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list with a reward of $100,000 being offered for him. Now at number Number 6 is Ismael El Mayo Zambada. Now this man is suspected to be a massive drug lord and leader of the Sinaloa cartel, because believe it or not, Narcos Mexico was based on a true story. He started off smuggling a few kilos here and there before solidifying himself as a cocaine trafficker. When El Padrino was arrested, his cartel split into two factions, the Tijuana cartel and the Sinaloa cartel. In 2006, the government launched a major offensive against drug trafficking, and the Tijuana cartel got screwed, which let the Sinaloa cartel swoop in and take their territories, and thus war ensued. Their cartel brings in multi-tons of cocaine and distributes them all over the US. He's been wanted by Mexico's Attorney General since 1998. People think he had plastic surgery done so he would become unrecognizable, just so he wouldn't have to leave Mexico and live in hiding. The FBI is offering $5 million for any information about him. Damn, Zeddy El Mayo. Gotta go on. Coming in at number 5 is Ani Nuvoyen. Now good old Ani over here was the biggest perpetrator of employment fraud in Estonia ever, and this is how he did it. Don't get any ideas. Now he would post huge ads on behalf of Interwork Corporation about various jobs in the Middle East, Europe, and South America. People who applied had to pay a fee in advance to pay for the foreign passport, travel fees, etc. And keep in mind, unemployment was at a high of 17%, and the fee he was asking for was 2,335 kroon, despite the average salary at the time being just 1,070 kroon. He also used many designer brands as tactics by saying they were limited jobs, so people started bribing him 1,200 kroons to be bumped up in the queue for a job. Ani told everyone that visas, info, tickets, everything would be handed over to them on March 23rd, 1999. But alas, his office had already closed back in February, so when the job seekers got there, they found all their documents that they had sent in the trash. But honestly, they should have done more research. One of Ani's listed business addresses was a literal wasteland. Like, come on, people. Around 3,000 to 5,000 people got scammed by him, making him a hefty profit. By 1993, Ani started going by the name Daniel Rosenberg and was advertising shady cars online and again defrauding people. Then the next year he went to Norway and started offering impoverished people jobs in Bulgaria, again manipulating 400 people. This guy made over 10 million kroons and was never caught. He went around defrauding half of Europe and wasn't caught. Come on now. And number 4 is Christopher Dale Flannery, aka Mr. Rent-A-Kill. This Australian contract killer had it rough from the start. By 17 years old, he'd been convicted of carrying firearms, police assault, housebreaking, and more. When he was finally released from jail, he became a bouncer, but seeing how that was boring, he moved on to contract killing, as everybody does. His first kill was a barrister called Roger Wilson, but since they didn't find the body, he was acquitted. He was then almost immediately arrested for killing Raymond Loxley, a brothel owner, 2 years prior. And again, he was acquitted. After that, he tried to improve his life and, just be on the right track by moving to Sydney and working as a bodyguard for crime figure George Freeman. Caught in the gang wars, he got paranoid and would always carry a gun with him wherever he went. In 1984, he was suspected of attempting to kill a drug squad detective, and things got messy when shots rained down on Christopher's house. Everyone survived and business continued. The next year, he was sent to kill Tony Spaghetti Eustace, and he managed to shoot him 6 times, but not enough to actually kill him. Police tried to speak to him, but he told them to F off, and then he died. Later that year, his boss Freeman called him for a meeting, and as he left, he caught a cab and went on his way. But he disappeared, leaving 2 children behind, never to return. So either Freeman killed him or he split because he was scared he would be killed. Either way, he's a fugitive on the run. Filling at number 3 slot is Hayat Boumediene. Now Hayat had her fair share of a bad life. Her mum died when she was 8, her dad wasn't there, and she was tossed between families and foster care and was beaten numerous times. In July of 2009, she married Ahmadi Coulibaly, and both were Muslim and extremely religious to an extremist level. In 2010, police found a bunch of assault rifle ammunition in their apartment, which is, not the best. Now Hayat was sought after by authorities because her husband was the prime suspect for the 2015 Montrouge shooting that was one of the Ile-de-France attacks. The shooting involved 3 attackers that killed 17 people before the police eventually shot all 3, and Ahmadi was one of them. But before any of this even happened, he had already helped Hayat flee the country. She traveled to Spain at the end of 2014 and then made it to Istanbul, where Turkish intelligence found it to be sus. They surveilled her for the next 2 days, after which she went to the Syrian border. At this time, her husband had just used her car in another attack, and she was complicit in it. She's still currently wanted for helping Ahmadi carry out his attacks and has been dubbed France's most wanted woman. Now, number 2 is Lord Lucan, aka Richard John Bingham, the 7th Earl of Lucan. I know, right? I love when noble people are on here, it's just that much juicier. So after World War II, Lucan was studying at Eton College, which is a very posh all-boys college in the UK for like the 1%. Now sadly, he took a liking to gambling and went on to become a professional gambler. The man was so hot, he was even considered to play James Bond, like, hello. He was hot. By 1963, he married Veronica Duncan and the couple had 3 children together, but after 9 years together, the marriage was going up in flames. Lucan moved out of the family home and a huge custody battle occurred over the kids, which he lost. After taking so many hits in his personal life, Lucan became depressed, paranoid, and erratic. All his gambling losses didn't help the situation either. To try and get custody, he started spying on Veronica to prove she was unfit to raise the kids since she had postnatal depression and had just fired their long-term nanny. After many nannies came Sandra Rivet in 1974. On the 7th of November, after putting the kids to bed, she went to the basement to make tea for Veronica, and once there, someone bludgeoned her to death with a lead pipe as the murderer told her to shut up. Apparently, Veronica heard her husband's voice and went down there, wherein they started fighting as well. Eventually, he admitted he had just killed Sandra, and Veronica agreed to help him escape. But the smart girl made a run for it and got away, after which Lord Lucan just disappeared. He called his mother and went to a friend's house, and then literally into thin air, he was gone. He literally evaporated. I don't get how someone so prolific like him could have successfully hidden for that long. He was declared legally dead in 2016 at age 81, but you can't just assume someone's dead because they're 80 years old. Come on now. People live long lives. And finally, at number 1 is Assata Shakur. Now this woman has racked up quite a few charges in her long life. As a former member of the Black Liberation Army and Black Panther Party, political and racial activism were her whole life. And the BLA engaged in many armed shootouts against the government since they would rob banks and kill police officers. At the start of the 70s, there was a multi-state manhunt for her after she had robbed a bank in Queens, then in the Bronx, and even a church, which was called Our Lady of the Presentation Church. The manhunt started after the FBI believed she was the head of a BLA cell that had killed a bunch of police officers. During the New Jersey Turnpike shootout, Assata killed Trooper Werner Forrester by shooting him in the head twice with his own gun, but both sides had been wounded. Between 1973 and 77, she had been indicted 10 times for kidnapping a heroin dealer, 2 bank robberies, 2 attempted murders of officers, and the rest of the charges were due to Turnpike. Many trials and mistrials occurred, of which she was only convicted once, acquitted thrice, and dismissed thrice. She was kept at Rikers Island in solitary confinement, but fellow BLA member Angela Davis claimed she was a political prisoner, so they started planning her escape. 3 members of the army got to the prison with dynamite and 2 guns, taking 2 officers hostage before escaping in a van. Wanted posters were put up for her, but in retaliation, her supporters put up Assata Shakur is welcome here posters in response. In 1984, she was given political asylum in Cuba, but the FBI is still offering $2 million for her. Fun fact, she's actually Tupac's godmother and step-aunt. Pretty cool.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the West Mesa Bone Collector. This is the name used to describe an unidentified serial killer who is said to be responsible for taking the lives of 11 different women whose remains were found buried in the desert of West Mesa in 2009. It is thought that this could be one person, or it could potentially be linked to some sort of group. There have been tips throughout the years and authorities have worked hard to try and get to the bottom of these crimes, but still the killer remains at large. There have been a few different suspects throughout the years, but there hasn't been enough concrete evidence to charge anyone with the crimes just yet. What's interesting about this case is that although the remains were found in 2009, according to authorities, upon examining satellite images, it is believed that the last of the remains were placed there in 2005.
At number 9, a man on the run. So another time in 2015, a man tried to escape a country through a bag. In Lima, Peru, a friend was dragging a really heavy bag and was acting nervous. He acted so nervous that officials asked him to open his bags. He did try to talk himself out of it, but the officials were unrelenting. So he gave up and opened his bag. The man inside the bag that was hiding was greeted by a dog that was sniffing the bag, which kind of a nice greeting. And then the man in the bag got out of it pretty casually, just knowing that he was caught. There was no use running away. Now, they didn't even make it to bag check. Did they really think they were gonna make it and flee Peru? I mean, if the man got checked in as a bag, there would still be the x-ray scan and they would see a human body in there. I just really want to know how far they think this plan would go. All the way? I doubt it. At number 8, we have a boy being smuggled. Now, another time in 2015, a 19-year-old Moroccan woman was looking nervous as she waited to cross the border. She was crossing at a land border crossing at Ceuta, a Spanish enclave city in North Africa. When the guards put her suitcase through a scanner, they discovered an 8-year-old boy in her suitcase. Just think about it. See the photo. So it turns out she was trying to smuggle the boy into Europe for her husband, the boy's father. At the border, she was detained as well as the father of the child eventually when he showed up. Now, since you obviously shouldn't try to put a person in a suitcase, especially a child, the Ceuta magistrate ordered the father to be held on charges of human rights abuse. Now, if you have the child's permission like David Dobrik did in one of his recent videos, the line, who knows? Plus, that was only for a couple minutes, not for an entire border crossing. But on to number 7, a YouTuber. An Australian YouTuber named Adam Saleh put out a YouTube video where he flew on a Tiger Airways flight in a suitcase. Now, it shows his friend zipping him in a suitcase and then picking him up after the flight. But Tiger Airways themselves tweeted back at Saleh and said that they saw a bunch of inconsistencies in the video. So no, he didn't make it across all the way in the suitcase. So the airway pointed out they had footage of him boarding the plane, plus that he was too heavy to be put on board as luggage as per their restrictions, and they also said he would have suffocated, or at least become a popsicle. Now, Saleh didn't expect the media attention as it was a prank for entertainment on his channel, but you do have to expect that airlines don't want people attempting this if they think it's true. If you think plane delays are bad now, just imagine if airlines keep finding people in suitcases. It's gonna be a big holdup. Really? At number 6, we have some Walmart shenanigans. So years ago, a guy went to Walmart with his buddies when they were bored. You know, how it is in the burbs. So that particular Walmart had had a lot of thefts lately, and this is important to remember. So when the group of teens got there, they were looking around trying to think of something to do when the main guy telling this story sees a suitcase. He gets many ideas, but convinces his buddies of one for sure. The manager of the store already answered their question about megaphones and is now seeing this group of teens cast glances around the store. So he's a bit suspicious. So then, the group of teens gets the main guy into the suitcase and they walk around the store with the talking suitcase, making noises, generally stirring a little fun among the other customers. So a bunch of people are giving them weird looks, but overall they're just having a grand old time. But then the manager spots the teens again and he just sees 2 guys dragging a heavy suitcase towards the front of the store. So with all of the thefts lately, he thinks the youths are just trying to run off with a bunch of liquor. Now, the teens catch on to the fact that the manager has caught them and the main guy escapes from the suitcase just so they can all make a run for it. Now the group of guys runs out with the manager hot on their heels and a cop that was sitting in the parking lot throws on its lights to try to chase them down. So the cop catches up and tells them that he got calls from the manager and they found the suitcase inside, but no liquor. So then the cop asks them what was in the suitcase. And so the main guy, who hid in the suitcase, just raises his hand. So the full story, if you want to read it in detail, is on Reddit by Pyronius. It's a fun one, I like the way he narrated it. On to number 5, bag on a train. Swiss officials found an Etrian man hiding in a suitcase. So it looks like the 6-foot guy shoved his body into a carry-on, and it's pretty unbelievable. It turns out the man was trying to catch a train from Italy to Switzerland without being caught. And the thing is, when you're that tall, trying to be confined into a carry-on, it's not comfortable, and he was making noises of discomfort, obviously. So those noises drew the attention of security who went to investigate the bag, and the man emerged from the bag with his hand unzipping the luggage, and then he popped out. Now, this was a first for officials who had seen people hiding in trunks of cars, but not luggage trunks. And the video itself, it's just kind of amazing to watch. Just the zipping, and then his arm comes out, and then his head pops out, and he's like, hello! He doesn't say hello, he's just detained by officers, but... Now, to number 4, remember to pack your wife. So, a 60-something man was traveling from Nice to Moscow. He had a really big suitcase and was struggling to pull it along, because it appeared quite heavy to officials. Now, as I said, the officials, they got on and they discovered something unauthorized packed in his bag. It was his wife. His wife is a Russian woman in her 30s, and he believed that she wouldn't be allowed into the EU. And so his belief did have a hint of truth in it, since non-EU citizens wouldn't be allowed, but the thing is his wife would, since she is married to an EU citizen. Him. Now, I find it funny that his first idea isn't to look up or double check that she isn't allowed or the different things that can be authorized, but his mind immediately went to, well, honey, if you want to go to Nice, you gotta get in the bag. Like, how does his mind go there first? You know, think it through, people. Think it through. On to number 3. a baby. Now this is horrifying, okay? Back in 2016, a woman on an Air France flight from Istanbul to Paris allegedly smuggled her baby on a plane. Now, 3.5 hours into the flight, witnesses noticed that something in her bag was moving when she opened it, and they saw a baby girl. Now, this reportedly happened because the paperwork for her baby was not in order. It is said that she was past customs when she was stopped from boarding with the baby, and reports say that she bought another ticket, hid the baby, and went to a different gate to board a different flight. Now, in this case, this means the baby made it past the initial screening, but then was stopped afterwards. Also, once you get to the gate of an airplane, people only check passports and boarding passes, so it does seem plausible that the baby was hidden in the woman's cloth bag at this time. Still though, just think of the safety of that baby. It's just in a carry-on on a flight for hours. No, it's just too much. At number 2, guess what we have? A baby, again. So again, this year, not 3 years ago, this year, someone tried this. In September, officials explained that a US woman was carrying a 6-day-old baby in her luggage. They said she passed through the airport immigration counter without declaring that she was traveling with the baby, and they said that there was intent to hide that she was with the baby. She was caught at the boarding gate by airline personnel who searched her oversized suitcase and found the child inside the oversized suitcase. So she was arrested after she was found to not have any travel documents for the baby. Then after the woman was arrested, she gave officials an affidavit at the airport. The affidavit was allegedly from the baby's mother giving permission to take the child into the US, but it wasn't signed by the mother. Therefore, it's inadmissible in court. So now the case is being handled by anti-human trafficking investigators from Philippines National Bureau of Investigation because it's a very serious thing. You shouldn't try to smuggle a baby that is not yours into another country. I don't know why I'm staring off into the distance, but it should... People, you know? Now let's move on to number 1, a prison bust. So in January of 2017, a Venezuelan woman went to the prison where her husband is. She went along with their 6-year-old daughter, rolling along some of her daughter's toys in a bright pink suitcase. Then, while she was there for a visit, her husband popped into that suitcase in hopes for an escape. Now, their escape plan failed as guards noticed her having trouble pushing the overstuffed suitcase. And when they found her husband, just curled up in the suitcase along with the toys, they sent him right back to his cell to serve out the rest of his 10-year sentence for car robbery. Now, because of the attempted help in the prison escape, the wife was arrested and their daughter was taken into temporary custody by social services. So, prison escapes in a bright pink bag might not be the best bet. Just throwing that out there. Maybe. Who knows?
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Jacek Jaworek. This is a man who's on the run because of the horrible crimes he committed in July of last year. He took the lives of 3 people who were a part of his own family. One of the family members was able to escape this horrific nightmare and was able to make it safely to the neighbor's house where they could call the authorities for help. Since these horrific crimes, he has gone missing and no one is sure of his whereabouts. Right now it is speculated that he likely escaped from Poland where the crimes took place, but his exact whereabouts remain quite the mystery.
Coming in at number 9 is Victor Manuel Jurena. This guy is a huge deal because as of April 2010, he's been on the fugitive list longer than anyone else. Victor was an EPB agent, which translates to the Boricua People's Army, a Puerto Rican guerrilla organization that campaigned for Puerto Rico's independence from the US. Victor was put on the FBI's most wanted list for his involvement in the 1983 Aguila Blanca armed robbery. September 12th started off as normal. Victor dropped his girlfriend off at Hartford City Hall to pick up their marriage license and then went to work at Wells Fargo. The company stored huge amounts of money at their depot and Victor was the trusted second in command that had most of the vault's keys. On the day, employees were moving a lot of cash in vans and at some point while doing this, Victor pulled a gun on his manager and co-worker before handcuffing them both. To try and disable them further, he injected them with water and aspirin, which actually did nothing. He then apologized before moving around $7 million from the vaults. Eventually his co-workers got out of the bonds and called the police, but Victor had already handed over the money to the EPB and headed to Boston and then New York and finally Cuba. At the time, this was the biggest cash robbery in US history and any information on Victor was worth $1 million. He was removed from the most wanted list in 2016 after being on it for 32 years and was presumed dead, but he's only 62, I doubt he's dead to be honest. Come on, he's rich and old. I'm sure he has people to make him survive. At number 8 8, we have Bhadresh Kumar Chetanbhai Patel. This man is currently in the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitive list, and I reckon anyone who's on this list deserves to be there. Back in April of 2015, Patel and his new wife Palak were working a night shift at a Dunkin' Donuts in Hanover, Maryland. Surveillance footage placed the couple in the kitchen at 9:30 p.m. and then they disappear behind some racks. A few moments later, Patel comes out without Palak, turns off the oven and leaves for the night. It wasn't until later that night Palak's body was found beaten and stabbed to death. Apparently he had used a giant kitchen knife. Authorities speculate that they must have gotten into an argument about Patel wanting to stay in America and Palak wanting to go back to India. Keep in mind the store wasn't closed when he left and customers grew confused as to why no staff was there. A nearby police officer noticed and went inside and finally found her body. That gave Patel a total of 1 hour before he was identified as a suspect, meaning he had time to escape. He fled on foot, getting some stuff from his apartment before taking a cab to an airport hotel and last being seen at Newark Penn Station. There's currently a $100,000 reward for any info about him. Filling our number 7 slot is Glenn Stewart Godwin. Back in the early 80s, Glenn was in Palm Springs working as a freelance mechanic, tool salesman and construction worker. For some reason, Glenn and his roommate Frank decide to rob their pilot drug dealer friend Kim Robert LaValle. They lured him back to their apartment where Frank held him while Glenn attacked him and tried to strangle him. When that didn't work, he stabbed him 26 times and the two loaded the body into a truck and headed for the desert. They strapped explosives to his body and left it in the truck and blew it up, hoping to destroy any and all evidence, but by August, residents near the area found the truck along with the remains of a body. After identifying the body, police charged Glenn while Frank testified against him. After being transferred from his first prison, Glenn was at Folsom State Prison, a maximum security prison where tools had somehow been smuggled in for him to help him escape. By June of 1987, he had escaped with the help of an outside accomplice. He was then arrested in Mexico but ended up killing a member of the Mexican drug cartel in prison, knowing it would delay his extradition. He used that to escape again, and he is still a free man as we speak. Damn you, Glenn! Now at number 6 is Arnoldo Jimenez. A lover spat is really the worst, especially when you've literally just gotten married. Sometimes they end well, and sometimes they end in murder. You guess how this one went. On May 11, 2012, Arnoldo got married to, and I don't know how to say her name, either Estrella Carrera or Estrella Carrera. Either way, the couple had 1 kid together, and Carrera had a son from a previous partner. That night, after the wedding festivities, the couple had dinner with friends and family, then went to a nightclub and got home at around 4 a.m. On the way home though, something happened between the two that brought out the demon in Arnoldo. He stabbed his wife multiple times in his car, then dragged her bloody body to their apartment and dumped her body in the bathtub. The next day, after Estrella failed to pick up the kids and with no word from Arnoldo, family members called the police, who found her body the next day, and Arnoldo was nowhere to be found. His phone was tracked to Chicago, then Memphis, Arkansas, and then Hidalgo, Mexico. Later that year, authorities arrested his brother Humberto due to drug charges and found Arnoldo's car on his person with blood inside, confirming their theory. It's believed he's still hiding somewhere in Mexico. How can someone kill their partner not even 12 hours after marrying them? Like, what the hell is that? Coming in at number 5 is Jason Derek Brown. This California native speaks fluent French, served as a mission for the Church of Latter-day Saints, and also has a master's degree. He's also considered armed and extremely dangerous, which is really far more interesting than the facts I said previously. Jason had been running check and bank fraud scams for years and was tens of thousands of dollars in debt. In November of 2004, he bought a pistol and took a firearms instruction course for his upcoming crime, of course. At the time, Jason was living at a hotel in Ahwatukee near an AMC movie theater. On the 29th, an armored car guard came by with the weekend deposits outside the theater. At 10 a.m., a hooded gunman shot the guard driving 5 times in the head. He then stole a bag containing $56,000 and fled on bike. The bicycle was later found and the prints matched Jason, who had to be fingerprinted during the firearms course. An arrest warrant was put out for him for armed burglary and first-degree murder, but Jason had already fled to Nevada. Because of his surfer dude appearance, the FBI got more tips about him than any other ever fugitive, and the latest sighting was in Salt Lake City. At number 4 is Alejandro Castillo. Fluent in English and Spanish, the Arizona local worked at a Show Mars restaurant located in Charlotte, North Carolina. In 2016, he got close with his co-worker, 23-year-old Truck Kwan Lai Lee, who went by the name Sandy. The two dated for a while, during which Sandy loaned him some money that he hadn't repaid. On the 9th of August of that year, Alejandro told her to meet him at Quick Trip so he could pay her back. His girlfriend Amia picked him up and drove him there, and instead of repaying her, he made Sandy take out $1,000 from an ATM while he had a gun to her head. After bankrupting her, the two drove Sandy to a wooded area before shooting her in the head and dumping her body in a ravine. The two fled to Phoenix and abandoned the car. Whilst back in Charlotte, Sandy was reported missing, and so were the other two. They called their families claiming they were safe but didn't know where they were, and their families thought they were being held captive. Nah, your kids are just murderers. Eventually, after they found Sandy's body, Alejandro was charged with first-degree murder and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Amia turned herself in October and was arrested for accessory felony murder and larceny. She told authorities where they had been staying, but Alejandro had already disappeared. Still at large somewhere until this day. Filling a number 3 slot is Jorge Lopez Perez, aka El Chuta. Perez is a very high-ranking member of Los Zetas, the most dangerous Mexican drug cartel in the world. Not only do they traffic drugs, the crime syndicate also do sex trafficking and gun-running rackets. You do not want to mess with this cartel. Their tactics include things like beheadings, torture, and they will assassinate or kidnap you without hesitation. Perez is especially dangerous because before he joined the cartel, he was in the Mexican army. The man specialized in explosives, martial arts, and guerrilla warfare tactics. He's extremely dangerous, do not get me wrong. He deserted the military in 1981 and joined the Juarez cartel, and from then till 2003 he worked with gangs and independently as a drug trafficker before joining Los Zetas. He knew a lot of the members already from his military days and was considered one of the group's founding members. Perez took care of drug trafficking in Cancun, and by 2009, after being cited as the regional leader of the group, Mexican authorities listed him as one of their leading fugitives. He's one of the only fugitives from the early Zetas generation who is still out there somewhere uncaught. Or, not dead. Now at number 2 is Daoud Ibrahim. Wanted since 1994, this Indian drug dealer and mobster is the most wanted by India, and they've offered $25 million for him. He started off with petty crimes like fraud and robbery, but he later joined the gang of a local don. By the 70s, he started his own gang with his brother and dubbed it the D Company. After killing Samad Khan, he fled to Dubai but still ran D Company, which was mostly involved in real estate, gold smuggling, drug trafficking, and extortion. By the 90s, his gang had 5,000 members in it and was bringing in hundreds of millions in revenue. The US named him a global terrorist after his believed involvement in the 1993 Bombay bombings, which killed 317 people and injured 1,400 others. After the attacks, he fled Dubai and hid in Karachi, and it's believed he's still there. The man knew Osama bin Laden. It was the Taliban that ensured his safe travels to Afghanistan in the 90s, and his gang uses Al-Qaeda's drug smuggling routes. I mean, the groups were close. Let's be real. He's committed so many crimes, I've honestly lost count, but the bastard is good at hiding, I will give him that. And finally, at number 1 is Joseph Kony. Does that ring a bell? Kony 2012? Stop Kony 2012? That documentary that came out and went viral and made Joseph Kony a household name. Some call him a terrorist, others a prophet. Whatever he is, he's escaped capture for over 2 decades now. In 2005, the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Kony on 12 accounts of crimes against humanity and 21 war crimes. As one of the leaders of the Lord's Resistance Army, he abducted, mutilated, killed, and brutalized civilians in northern Uganda. And even more horrifically, the army is known for kidnapping children and using them as sex slaves or soldiers. The LRA were known to cut off people's limbs or parts of their face in the 90s, which terrified hundreds of thousands, causing them to flee. He references the Bible to explain why it's necessary to kill his own people, and was eventually forced out of South Sudan, Congo, and even the Central African Republic. He's still at large somewhere, but since the LRA has shrunk to about 100 soldiers, he's no longer deemed a security threat to Uganda. Even then, this man is extremely dangerous. Somebody catch him, please.